Every so often I record a video about a game that is old. And I know that it's old because people do not hesitate to tell me this in comments, usually asking, why are you covering this old game? Everyone knows about this game and we don't need videos on it anymore. And that's not true, of course. That's never true for any creative thing. Not everyone knows about it, and new people are being born all the time and discovering games. They're getting older and they run across things that might be old to you and me, but are new to them. They are discovering it. It is simultaneously old and new because the newness of something relates to someone's familiarity with it. And if I can talk about a game that I love that might be new to someone, I can help introduce that game to them, I want to do so. And every so often, an old game comes back on the market and is new again. So now I'm covering both an old game and a new one at the same time. That's the case with Expeditions Around the World, designed by Wolfgang Kramer, that has been released in various forms over the past few decades, with the origins of this design dating back to the early 70s. I have a designer diary from Kramer that I'll publish on PGG News, talking about the different iterations of this design. I first ran across it in 2003 in a Queen Games edition that came out in 1996. This edition debuted from French publisher Super Meeple in 2023 and is now in 2024 hitting the North American market. So, thought I'd talk about this game that I love that is both new and old at the same time. Here's how it works. Here are the components of Expeditions Around the World, with the game board showing 6 of the 7 continents of Earth. Antarctica, get lost. We don't care about you. You have lots of different spots on the board connected by paths, with most of these spots being green named locations. And each location has a corresponding card in the deck, has a name at top, has where it's located on a miniature map in case you need to find it. It uses the art that is shown on the board, again, to help you find it, and it's got some facts you can read should you care to do so. Each player starts with a secret hand of 9 or 12 cards, depending on the player count, and you have 6 face-up cards. Each player also has 2 tickets. We'll talk about them later. But you are trying to reach these locations, or the public ones, with expeditions that are going to start in Northern Europe and travel around the world, with all players contributing to where these expeditions go. Before the game itself really begins, each player is going to mark 4 of their locations publicly. So I could place a token showing I want to go to Puerto Rico. Now you know I have that card in my hand. And each other player is going to mark in turn, so we go around the board. Each location you mark has to be at least 3 steps away from the starting location. But other than that, you can mark where you wish. And I'll just put all these on the board, pretending I'm doing so strategically, but really just want to get to the game. Now, on a turn, you are going to place an arrow on the board. You have arrows in 3 colors that represent the 3 expeditions. As the first player, choose a color of your choice. Place it from the starting location pointing outwards. So this expedition can go to Athens, or Rome, or Stonehenge, or Thingvellir, Svalbard, or a blue square. Mysterious. If I point to a location and anyone has this card, they reveal it and they score it. Now they've been there. They've been to Athens. I don't know what other people have. Maybe they're going to go there. Athens can't be up here. All the public locations have to be at least 3 spaces away. But you're going to choose somewhere to go because you're trying to go to particular locations, both public and private. If you point to a blue square, you immediately take another turn. So you can play another expedition. So I could start here and go to Stonehenge if I want, or I could add to the blue location here. So I'm trying to go up here to Novosibirsk. Maybe I just extend this location. You go from the end of the arrow and add on. Okay, next player goes. Sure, maybe they want to go to Stonehenge. Maybe it's the yellow player over here. The next player goes, and they go down to Babylon because they are trying to get here. My turn is around again. I've got this 3-player game. I don't want that. I want to go here to Novosibirsk. I could be a jerk and direct this expedition away, go to Petra instead of going here where they clearly want to go. But you have 2 tickets, and tickets let you do 3 things. One thing they do, you spend a ticket. Usually we place it on the board so you know that you have spent a ticket because you can spend at most 2 on a turn, and you can remove the last arrow on an expedition. And now I take my turn, and I'm going to put this arrow here, go to Novosibirsk, claim the token, take the card, which actually I don't have because, of course, I just put that down at random. I would put the card down. We'll pretend this is Novosibirsk. And there we go. Each token and each card you put down in front of you is worth a point. So now I've got 2 points. If you want, you can also spend a token to take an extra turn. So you can take an extra turn with any of the expeditions. I could start the red one. I could extend the yellow one. Or maybe I do the blue one. I go here, I take another turn, and I go up here, and if you point to an arrow, you get a ticket from the reserve. So I spent 2 tickets, I got 1 back. Why did I do this? Well, maybe I've got locations up here, I want to direct this, I want to direct it away from here. There's all sorts of reasons why you want to move something. Next player goes. Again, they could go here, they could spend a ticket to take an extra turn, and then get over here and claim this token. Maybe the next player starts another expedition. And you're going to continue taking turns this way, adding to an expedition, trying to reach all these locations, putting them down in front of you. If a public location is claimed, someone makes their way over to Tikal as this yellow one is sort of going in this direction. That player takes this card, puts it in front of them. They'll get a point for that at the end of the game. You draw a new one from the deck. Put that out as well. It's a little confusing to have these up here and you have to remember where all the public locations are. We have been using tokens to mark them on the board. You can use whatever tokens you wish, and that helps you keep track of things. So we can put one on the Galapagos Islands, and we can put one on Victoria Falls, which I used to know where that was. Okay, and so on, and Mount Fuji. And now it's much clearer where those locations are. Everyone is trying to reach them in theory because it will score them a point. I might be trying to even more because, of course, I have things located here. Yellow has one down here, so they might be looking for this. Elmina is another one right here next to white. So those are the expeditions. Now you're going to continue play. If you travel here, let's pretend we're going to take multiple turns. You go over here. If you reach this star here, you get a ticket for pointing to a star, and when you continue the yellow expedition, you can continue on either of these lines because you cannot double back on the same line, or go on the other side of the board. So someone could go here, get a ticket, and then spin that ticket and go to Mount Fuji. There we go. Claim that card, turn up a new one. You got the Great Wall. There we go. Hey, right next to Mount Fuji. If I had another ticket and had not spent 2 already, I could immediately take yellow and get Great Wall. Let's pretend I do that. Sure. In my fake game. Pull up Madagascar. Oh, which means white would not have claimed that. We'll pretend white went to the Atlantic Ocean instead. Okay. The hazards of putting stuff out at random. Now, as you continue play, you might reach a situation. Someone goes up here. Someone makes a loop. When you make a loop, there is no end point to the expedition. There's no end arrow head to add to. So when someone creates a loop, they immediately play an arrow of that color anywhere off this expedition. So the white player may have decided to make a loop here so that then they could come down to Babylon. Maybe they spend a ticket and go get this immediately. Maybe not. But the whole point of doing the loop is that you can branch off of what's already there. If yellow had not come over here to claim the Great Wall, someone could have made a loop here and then immediately played off and taken the Great Wall. Okay. So there's all sorts of tricky things that you can do with loops because you get to play anywhere. You can sort of backtrack where the expedition has already been and bypassed. What's more, if you create a loop, let's see. All right. So if we keep going in this twisted location here and you make a loop that points to a blue arrow, you immediately play off this expedition because you have created a loop. So again, I could go here if I am the white player trying to go here, or I can go wherever I wish. I can go here and get a ticket. And because I pointed at a blue square, I then have a free turn to add to any expedition. That's pretty good. With the tickets and with loops and with blue spaces, you can sometimes place 4 or 5 arrows on a turn. So place one for here. Now I'm going to place 2. I can play more tickets. I'm going to place more. If I want to do that, hit another blue, go again, and so forth. You can chain across the board and do lots of locations at once or get more tickets, especially down in this area where there's lots of free moves and then tickets, free moves and tickets, to get across all these ocean spaces where there's nothing to stop at, no locations to go visit. You keep taking turns until all the arrows are gone, which I don't think I've ever seen in more than 30 games, or someone has claimed all the locations in their hand. They've visited all these spaces, they have put those cards down, they've got all these tokens off the board, and everyone's going to count points. You get 1 point for each card, each location you have visited and have a record of, 1 point for each token you've claimed. You lose a point for each token left on the board and for each card left in hand. Now, you may think that the person who finishes is going to win because they have no negative points. They have no tokens on the board, they've claimed all their cards. But the public locations complicate that because someone can be quite prolific getting these locations and end up with way more points thanks to the public ones than what they would have claimed just with what's in their hand, such as this over here where we had Mount Fuji and then the Great Wall popped up. If when you're putting up locations, you would put up something that has already been visited, the Caspian Sea comes up, well, doesn't matter that the blue location visited there already. You weren't looking for it at that time. Now you want to go to the Caspian Sea. So now you want to visit it again with any of the 3 expeditions. Maybe blue will loop back. Maybe red will go over here now. But now you go back and do that. Okay. Expeditions can overlap. Hadn't talked about that yet. But if red comes over here, red gets a free move. Red goes up here. On its next turn, it can go here. It's okay to run different expeditions side by side. It could also run in reverse. So this could go back here. That's okay. You just can't have the same expedition cover the same spot with an arrow again because it's already gone there. No one wants to see that again. Well, anyway. Now, last thing with the ticket. You can spend a ticket to remove the last arrow. You can spend a ticket to place an additional arrow, and you can do that before or after your normal turn. The third thing you can do with a ticket, if I remove, I place here, I can go here and get a ticket, and then play a second ticket on the turn. I removed one, play a second ticket, and now I take an extra turn and go over here and get Puerto Rico. Yes, 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 yes. Always focused on scoring here. The third thing you can do with a ticket is exchange a card in hand. You would draw 2 cards from the deck, add them to your hand, and then you take any 2 cards in your hand and put them on the bottom of the deck. You could just place the 2 that you drew on the bottom or something else that you don't think you're ever going to get back to. We went by Zagorsk. You don't think we're going to hit it again? Throw it away. If you had placed a token on the space and you discard the card, well, then you're going to lose a point from that token you didn't pick up. But so be it. Maybe you'll get something better, more easily accessible with the expeditions. All There you go. You can imagine this board getting very full over time. Lots of twisty loops going around. One difference in Expeditions around the world compared to earlier versions of Expedition are that you can, as the rules state, make any number of loops on a turn. So you can do complicated things, as I started talking about down here, where you get free turns, go to a location, free turn ticket, and so on. You might have this big loop that circles here, and then with the extra loop arrows, you subdivide it, and then make another loop and go again, and subdivide it and go again, and subdivide it and go again. There's lots of ways to abuse that loop system, which is why earlier rule sets said maximum 1 loop per expedition on a turn. I can make a blue loop, a red loop, a yellow loop, all in one turn, but I can't go back and do another blue loop. So you don't get to do that funny stuff down here. Whether you want to follow one rule set or the other, I'll let you decide. But just want to let you know how the rules are played. Keep going until someone has claimed all their cards or the expeditions are done, which, again, I've never seen. One final thing. Loops can sometimes be hard to spot. If you manage to go back here, unlikely. You've already visited these locations with blue. Maybe someone's desperate to go get the Caspian Sea. But if you go back to here, yellow has now looped entirely around the globe, and there's no empty arrow. There's no arrowhead that's free. So you would immediately play off yellow. I can go to Teotihuacan. There we go. There's an overview of Expeditions around the world, which I've played twice on this new edition from French publisher Super Meeple, on a review copy from Hachette Board Games, which is distributing Expeditions in North America. I played more than 30 times on the Queen Games edition, mostly in the 2000s, and only with 2, 3, and 4 players, as far as I can recall. The game goes up to 6 players, and yet have not tried it with 5 or 6. Again, as far as I can recall, thinking back 2 decades on my experience with this game, the game plays very differently based on the player count. With 2 players, it's very tight. There's very little movement of expeditions between each of your turns, so you have some idea of where everything is going to be and what's possible. How far can the opponent take an expedition between each of your turns? They can play at most 5 arrows or so. Depends on how many tickets they have. Depends on where everything is located. So you can plan a little bit, lead something in a certain direction and know it's generally going where you want to go, and it'll probably still be there next turn. If you have an experienced player against someone who is new in a 2-player game, it can be harsh because the new player, if they're playing well, they know what they're doing. I'm complimenting myself here because I've done this a few times. They can strand the new person where they can't do much of anything. They're going to place an arrow, and that's it. Especially if the new person plays that through their tickets, which new players often do. They think they'll always have a chance to get more, and they'll play them out, and then the experienced player will strand them. And they place an arrow, they can't get a free turn, they can't get a ticket, and that's it. They do almost nothing. And then the experienced player goes, and they get a free move, they get a ticket, they spend a ticket, they get another ticket, and so forth, and they leave that expedition again, where the other player is only going to place 1 arrow and do nothing else. And the game becomes very disappointing for them. Through their own fault, admittedly, but they didn't know that because they're new. As you get more experience with the game, though, it's really engaging and tactical because you are trying to get all these things, just a little bit of edge over the other person. The experience changes a lot with 3 and 4 players because there's more people going between each of your turns, so there's different things that happen with the expeditions. You didn't expect someone to just whoop, whoop, whoop across the board, or someone did blue and yellow and you thought you were going to go on one of those and now neither of them is good, or someone leads you to the perfect spot where you can play off there. There's a lot more dynamic movement with more players. And again, I'm curious about 5 and 6 players, but we'll see. We'll try it at some point. It has this cooperative, competitive element with generally more than 2 people, where you're possibly trying to go to the same spot. If someone puts down a token at the beginning of the game on a location and you've got the location next to it, do you mark that location so that both of you know what you're trying to do? You're going to work together and get an expedition down there and each of you profits from that? Or are you going to not mark it and hope that they do all the work getting that expedition down there, and then maybe hit your location on the way or hit it on the way leaving, or you just place one arrow after they did lots of work to get you there? Lots of interesting moments here because you're all playing in the same space. And with 3 expeditions, you've got choices of where to go. And sometimes they'll overlap and start branching and go different ways, or they'll cross going this way. It's great and dynamic to see that board develop. There's tons of variability in the gameplay and how the expeditions branch out just based on players and what cards you have and all that. There's no frills or extras or expansion packs being added in. There's nothing extraneous in this game. Everything works perfectly where there's just a little public information. You've got some idea of what people are trying to do. You've got some public location. So again, you've got people have an incentive to go there, to those locations, in addition to the public ones. And then you kind of read minds as well and try to imagine where someone is going, what they're trying to do, how many cards they have left in their hand. They've got 2 public, but they've got 6 cards, so 4 are hidden and blah, blah, blah. You try to figure out all this, where people are going, what they're doing, and make the best of it. It's very engaging, again, because you're in this shared space, and every move that you do affects what other people can do, especially the loops, which sometimes will just send an expedition off in a new direction. So you make a loop here and then boom, suddenly you're in South America, which they did not see coming. They can, I didn't mention this, you spend the ticket to remove the last arrow in an expedition. And if they remove that last arrow and you're again at a loop, then they can play anywhere. That's one way that tickets are incredibly helpful. And again, why you want to hold on to them so you can take advantage of these moments where, yes, you just get to branch off again and possibly nail a location that you need to go that's one space away from where the expedition is. So even if an expedition doesn't always get there, if it's close, maybe later you can loop and then branch off and hit it. It's all little minor stuff, I don't know, there's gamey elements, and then there's sort of like family elements as well, where you could play this much more gamerly, planning ahead and do the tricky stuff with the loops and this, that, and the other. Or there's much more where you can just like flow and don't worry about it. I get an expedition, I get a location, you get a location, and so on. What's funny is the designer diary that Wolfgang Kramer wrote, he mentions in it that Alan Moon was inspired by Expedition to make Ticket to Ride. And you can really see the similarities there. You're trying to build paths to reach locations. The gameplay is not similar, but just the feeling, the spirit of it is there with that sort of family gamer dynamic where it works on both levels. What's funny as well, Franz Benno de Long designed TransAmerica after being inspired by Expedition. And that's another game that has this cooperative, competitive element where you're trying to leech off other people. Ideally, they do the work in this shared network that's being built across the board. They get most of the way there, and then you get to just finish and reach the town, make your town incorporated into that network. I love TransAmerica. That's one of the videos that is an old one that I've done and talked about because the game's still in the market. It's a classic. It's beautiful, just like Ticket to Ride and just like Expedition. So if you haven't tried this game, there's a lot going on. It's really engaging. And again, it's very streamlined and focused with nothing extra. It's all just on the table in front of you with all of you working in the same space. It's one of the things I've grown less excited about as I've tried lots of different games with people having their own board and building my own thing. And I'm sure we're drafting together or I'm taking resources away from me or doing something like that. But my focus is often just on my own board. And here we're sharing that focus on the world and trying to imagine where everything is going to go, where we're going to end up, and whether that's going to help us. Really enjoy it. I think it's good. And if you haven't tried it already, well, then it's new to you. And maybe you can give Expedition a try. Or Expeditions, as this one is called. Even though it's the same gameplay as the older versions. It's all good, whatever edition you play.